All right, sports fans, thank you for tuning in. It's been a while, but we are back at it. Ishmael Sistrunk with the St. Louis American newspaper, here with Melvin Moore, my partner in crime. Melvin, how's it going?
Ah, man, fantastic.
Fantastic. And of course, we know there's not a lot of sports going on today, virtually no sports going on. So ESPN, they pulled out an ace in their hole, Melvin, The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls documentary. It's supposed to air in June. They said nothing's going on right now. We got to get this out to the people. So all 10 episodes are out there. If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the details. So pause this, favorite this, save this, do whatever you have to do, watch the episodes, and come back. But Melvin, we're about to get into it. Have you seen all 10 episodes, and what are just some of your primary thoughts on this?
Well, actually, I have. It's fantastic. One of my favorite things about the documentary was it reminded me of my youth, man. I remember exactly where I was while some of those games were being aired. My house really wasn't a basketball household. I was the biggest fan. But when Mike was in the finals, man, you would have thought my mother was his mother. Like, she was like, I can't take it. I'm running upstairs. She would go upstairs when it would get down to crunch time, and we would hear her scream when he hit the shot from upstairs. We were all downstairs watching the game. And it reminded me of how much people love the game and exactly what Mike brought to it, man. Social media wasn't in existence back then. And so the other thing I really liked about it is we got to see Mike behind the scenes, which is something we haven't seen up until now.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I've heard from a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I've talked to about it, that they really just love seeing, especially young Mike. You know, Mike, when they had the cursive Chicago across the front of his jersey when he first got into the league. And
he still had hair, man.
Yeah, he still had hair before he went fully bald. And we never saw a lot of that. You see little clips every once in a while, but this is the first time where you really got sustained images, sustained interviews behind the scenes about Michael Jordan and those Bulls teams. So even though this is called The Last Dance, it's about mainly the 97-98 season, which was the Bulls' last championship run, but they talked about his entire career throughout, and it was told in a non-linear fashion. So they would go from 1988, and all of a sudden 10 seconds later you're in 1995, and then 5 minutes later you're in 1991. And so a lot of times that type of storytelling may bother me, but it didn't. I thought it worked. I think if you try to tell the story of Michael Jordan and the story of those Chicago Bulls in a linear fashion, it's just going to be long, it's going to be boring. So the way they told that story was able to keep it interesting and keep it fresh.
Yeah, it was excellently directed. And like you said, that skipping back and forth can kind of be disruptive sometimes.
Right.
But I mean, the way they did it was perfect, man. Everything was in sync and lined up and made sense.
And you talked about being young, being a kid, basically during those times, and you and I are around the same age. What is it that you learned from watching this documentary?
You know, it's always said that Jordan is a competitor, but until the words come out of his mouth, you don't understand how competitive he was. Like, the stories he tells about, you know, using somebody saying something to him as a catalyst for him to just destroy them the next time he saw them. That whole deal with Byron Russell was crazy. That was crazy. He said Byron mentioned to him, this is after he retired. I mean, after he went to play baseball.
Right.
That if he was still in the league, he could guard him. Byron was a rookie. They met in the finals, and he used that every time he got him. He was killing him based off of just that comment. And it takes you inside the mind of somebody who's kind of, you know, at the next level of their craft, you know.
Yeah, and that definitely was major. I knew a little bit about Jordan's competitiveness. I mean, we've heard about it forever. I know some people in St. Louis who Michael Jordan has come to St. Louis before, and they said even when he was here and he would go to the pool halls and he would just bet like crazy, and if he beat you once, that wasn't enough. He had to beat you twice. Otherwise, it just meant he could get lucky. But I've heard tales and stories about Jordan's competitive nature, but like you said, to hear it directly out of his mouth or to hear it from his teammates, people who have firsthand experience, I think that was interesting. I also thought a lot of the details behind some of those biggest games, where even in the game 6 against the Utah Jazz, and at that time I was a big Jazz fan. I was a Karl Malone, John Stockton fan. So during those 2 seasons, right, I was rooting against the Bulls, but to find out that Pippen was in such pain and such back pain, like I remember the announcers mentioning it, but when you get to see him grimacing, up close, when you see him going back and forth to the locker room, I just didn't understand the depth of that. Or even after his father passed away and he talked about how that bothered him. So a lot of instances like that where you just hear little details and maybe you even knew at the time, but that you've forgotten over the past, 20, 25 years. And so to be able to see that and have that video, what was amazing. And I think it also was great that the Bulls allowed the media to come, especially in that last season, that 97, 98 season, to just follow them around so much to make a documentary like this possible.
Definitely. It's crazy because we're kind of spoiled these days. There are so many camera angles and players are mic'd up and they're doing interviews between plays with players on the sidelines now. Back then, they just didn't have the technology to cut it all together. Right. It would have taken way more time. And to see just the raw amount of footage that they had was amazing to me. Another thing I really loved, and it kind of humanized him, was the relationship between him and his security guard.
Right.
How he took him on as a father figure and was a big part of him and his wife's lives. Like that, showed a different side of Mike besides the jerk that you hear about so much, and I think that comes from just being sheltered and understanding that Mike understood the mic was on at all times. You know what I mean? So I think those behind the scenes footage really helped with his character.
Yeah, I think the biggest tragedy, I just thought about when you mentioned the security guards, is that the one curly haired guy, Lee Wozniak, I believe is his name, that, he really got famous after this. A lot of people are like, who is this guy? Because he had a very distinctive look. He, he just stood out as a character amongst all these characters. And unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year. So it's sad that he didn't really get to live to see, his fame, quote unquote fame. But definitely interesting seeing stories like that, seeing the security guards that were with him, seeing his friends, seeing people in his past. One of the most interesting stories to me, and actually I loved every episode. I've watched all 10 episodes. Everyone was great. But the one when they were talking about Tony Kukoc and when they were in the Olympics and how Jordan basically wanted to shut down Kukoc simply because Jerry Krause thought he was good and he was interested in signing him. And so Jordan was like, we got to shut this guy down. I guess he saw the writing on the wall. Krause was going to try to end our legacy. So him and Pippen just shut down Tony Kukoc completely in the Olympics.
Yeah, that was like, I was like watching 2 pit bulls on a squirrel or something, man. That was crazy. Like the determination between those 2 guys when they put their focus to stopping him from scoring. That was, you hear the stories once again, all that footage just, literally shows you how intense that game was. But the big thing that I won't say nobody, but a lot of people don't talk about is how Tony bounced back the next game. They had to play them in the finals for the gold medal. And he had a decent game. And he knew that they were going to be gunning for him again. And he showed what he was made of. He was like, hey, I belong in the NBA. And not that long after that, they were teammates winning championships.
Right. And they said he earned their respect, in that championship game by bouncing back like that. So speaking of respect, I mentioned Jerry Krause a little bit earlier, and Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner and the general manager, just the role that they had, because it just seems crazy to me that really the whole impetus behind this, The Last Dance, is that the ownership really had put their foot down. Jerry Krause announced before the season Phil Jackson wasn't going to be brought back. They knew that Michael Jordan had said he wasn't going to play for another owner. But how crazy is it that you've won 5 straight, or not straight, but you won 5 NBA championships in 7 years and going for your 6th? How crazy is it for a GM to say, this is it, we're breaking it up after this season?
That's unimaginable. Like, teams dream of having this type of lineup, this type of superstar. And, he had played his whole career in Chicago. He had been doing 1-year contracts up until that point. So just like he mentioned, he said he didn't even know that's what the owner was going to say was his excuse for them breaking that group up, that they felt like they couldn't get all the pieces back because, once teams start winning championships, players' value go up.
Right.
You got a salary cap. You can't keep everybody. So they were just expecting to, shuffle the deck. Mike was going to leave, so they didn't have to worry about him. He was retiring. But just the thought process behind it didn't make sense to me. It's like he said, if you offer all those players 1-year contracts, the good majority are going to come back. And from there, it's on the front office to put in the missing pieces. You see it all the time, like San Antonio. They win a championship, players get that big contract and leave. But if you can keep your key pieces, you can build around them and keep a nice franchise rolling. They haven't been the same since.
Exactly. And I think a big part of that, which they hinted at early on in the series, is that a lot of that was ego. Jerry Krause wanted the credit. You got Michael Jordan, you got Scottie Pippen. Early on, you had Horace Grant, later Dennis Rodman, and those guys are getting all the publicity. When you watch ESPN, when you watch these other sports stations or news stations, everybody's showing love towards the players, which is as it should be. But I feel like Jerry Krause, he wanted to be known as the greatest GM in history. He was mad that he wasn't getting any of that publicity. And to keep it real, I mean, he put together good teams. He deserves credit. But when you're a GM, when you're a front office person, you can't expect to share the limelight with the players. The players are the ones who are out there playing for the fans every night. They're going to get the credit. And it reminded me a little bit of the Rams when they were in St. Louis. And I feel like their management, I think Jay Zygmunt was one of them, Charlie Army, like they weren't satisfied when the Rams had Kurt Warner and Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Marshall Faulk. And Dick Vermeil was the coach that first year when they won the championship. It just seemed like the front office wasn't getting enough credit. And I remember just thinking at the time, like, why are they trying to break this up, or why are they trying to push March, or why are they trying to do this? And so it's just like the executives got to chill. Like, let the players get the shine. You're going to get paid. You're going to get your accolades at the end of the career. Let Michael Jordan be Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, his quote summed it up. Front offices win championships. No, they don't. Number 23 carries y'all on his back. Y'all should be kissing that man's feet to this day. See how different perspectives play a big part in success, man. A lot of guys would be like, man, I want to ride this wave of success. But he wasn't, he wasn't confident and competent with that. Like he needed something else. I guess he needed the credit, like you said.
Yeah, can you imagine being the guy that ran Michael Jordan out of town? Like, that's your legacy.
Right.
And you could have just shut up and won championships.
Yeah. They could have got, 7 or 8 easy, I think.
All right, so we won't try to belabor this a long time, but I do want to ask, so what was your favorite guest appearance? We saw a lot of former NBA stars. We saw a lot of executives, a lot of people in the basketball world, which I think really was one of the highlights of this series also, is even though it was about the Bulls, they brought in so many other people from the past. But who was your favorite character or side storyline that they had throughout this series?
I got some honorable mentions. Yeah, it was great to hear, Reggie Miller's point of view.
Right.
I heard it was hard to get him. Point of view.
I heard it was hard to get Reggie Miller to commit. Like, he didn't want to do it. He was so hurt from those losses that he didn't want to. They had to ask him over and over.
I bet. And speaking of that, My favorite appearance was a non-appearance. That was Karl Malone. How you not have Karl Malone or Byron Russell? Like, they asked Byron a bunch of times too. Like, that shot to win the game over him is historic. It's iconic. I want to know if Mike pushed him. That's what I want to know. Did Mike push you? It looked like Mike pushed you. Mike said he might have gave him a kind nudge. He helped him to a seat.
Well, like I said, at the time I was rooting for the Jazz, and I was definitely team push. But going back and looking at it, even over the years, Russell was Jordan put on the brakes, and Russell was going that way. Jordan gave him a little hand assistance, but whether he touched him or not, Byron Russell was falling out of that frame. So, and that truly is one of the most iconic images of Jordan, is after he hit that last shot and just leaving his wrist, just leaving it up there. And even though, again, I was a Jazz fan at the time, it's nothing but respect. And I'm a huge Jordan fan in general and overall his career. So, I thought that was great. And I did like, again, the Bad Boys, Isaiah Thomas, and just that whole storyline of them talking about how they beat up Jordan. I knew that it happened, but just to see it put together like that, I think was pretty amazing.
I will say one thing that surprised me was how little his kids were in the documentary. They were in like 30 seconds. His daughter had like one quote, and his sons sat together and talked for like 20 seconds, and that was like it.
Hey,
it seemed like they would go into how, having Michael Jordan as a dad, affected their life, and I know they saw a lot of things behind the scenes. Maybe that's the next dance or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's for the OWN network, Lifetime network. We trying to see buckets. How many buckets did his kids give us? No, they got the appropriate amount of time. I want to see people getting buckets or people who got buckets. That's it.
Now, Juanita's episode will be for Lifetime. There you go.
All right, so the last question I have for this is, Jordan has been, I don't know, people have varying opinions on Jordan. Of course, a lot of people call him the GOAT. Other people don't like him maybe because he didn't take as strong a political stance, or he didn't do as much in the community as some other players. After watching this documentary, did you come away with any different opinions on Michael Jordan, be it good or bad, or something that you learned, or just something that you took from it beyond the basketball side?
I kind of touched on it earlier. Like I said, just some of the relationships he had with other people, it humanized him a little bit more for me. And as far as on the court, it just proves what I already knew. Mike was the man. I guess we'll have to just assume the rest like we always have. But
yeah, and I thought it brings Jordan to the current generation who didn't watch him play. Somebody who's 20 years old, never saw Jordan play. And even though you can go on YouTube and you can look at different highlights, to have it all contextualized through this, I don't know if it's a mini series, it's a mega series, whatever you want to call it, docu-series. I think that is great. And I think it will put Jordan more in the GOAT category to some of the younger people who didn't see him and want to say whoever, LeBron is the GOAT, or whoever else is the GOAT, Kevin Durant, or some guys, just because that's who they see. But sort of giving him that context, I think was great. Also, I know Jordan's got a lot of criticism for not necessarily being the most political person. And for me, I'm like, he should have the right to not necessarily be into that. I wasn't disgusted that he wouldn't endorse that political candidate, and maybe that candidate was great and it would have been a great thing to do. But I think sometimes we criticize, especially Black athletes, because they don't do what we would do. And there have been a lot of rumors, I can't verify whether they're true or not, about him supporting for-profit prisons and things like that. And I think one thing that this documentary did show is that Michael Jordan was far from a perfect person. Like during the 80s and 90s, he had a really highly cultivated image where he was doing Nike and Gatorade and Wheaties and all of these endorsements, and even to be like Mike, they also talk about the gambling that he did. They talk about sort of his imperfections when it comes to just being too competitive, where the fact that he's violent and punching teammates and going off on teammates and yelling at teammates. So this showed that he wasn't perfect. Jordan wanted to be judged by what he did on the court, and whether you agree with it or whether you don't, like, that was the decision that he made. So I don't know about the for-profit prisons, if that was a thing. If so, that's definitely disgraceful.
And if you go into that side, it's a lot of money that he's giving to colleges and youth programs and all kind of stuff.
But if he doesn't want to be a political person, like, so be it. I'm not going to hold that against him. So right. Yeah, I think Jordan's the GOAT. I love this series. I think this series may be the GOAT. This might be the GOAT documentary. I'm
gonna definitely watch it again.
Exactly.
I'm gonna definitely just binge watch it again at least once or twice.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Now that it's over, now that we have all 10 episodes out there, because they released them twice per week, now I probably will go back and watch them again. So let us know, to our fans, to our audience, to our viewers, let us know, have you watched the series? Are you going to go back and watch it again? Did you enjoy it? Do you think Michael Jordan is the GOAT, or do you think LeBron James or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or one of these other people is the GOAT? Let us know. Make sure you subscribe to our page. Make sure you like our page. Make sure that you favorite our videos, and we're going to be coming back.
These are the originators. You know those Jordan 1s right there.
Right.
Yeah. They'll fly, they flying on their own. I don't even have them on my phone. They've been hanging for like an hour, right?